What's going on? What's going on? It's your boy, Storyteller Jet, here today with another episode of That's So Fire Evolution Podcast. And today we have a special guest, my great friend, Brad Chandler. We had a lot of fun, when I came and worked with you
Yeah.
in DC. But today we have here in Tampa, recording a podcast today. And it's so incredible seeing the transformational journey that you've went through over the past couple years. So I'm really glad and really honored to have you here today at the podcast to share a little bit about what you've been working on and all the great things and all the great lives that you're changing also. So yeah, man, excited to have you here today. So let's start by making a quick introduction of yourself and share a little bit about your background and what led you into the field of life transformation and personal development.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. We got to tell you can't start a story and not finish it, right? Because you said you're the storyteller. So we had a lot of fun. Why do we have a lot of fun? We're shooting videos in this vacant house that was had all this junk in it in this kind of sketchy neighborhood, and there was no electricity. So we had to get a generator and we had to run a cord, and the generator stopped working. It was freezing cold. It was just like one calamity after the next. But we got the video shot, and your awesome, editing and skills, they were awesome. So anyway, back to your question, which I forgot.
Can you share
Tell me a little bit about
Yeah.
Sure. So look, I'm a real estate guy by trade, and 3 years ago, trying to get my son help for anxiety, I was told that I had a tick. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I was on a Zoom call. And she's like, yeah, you have a tick. I was like, what do you mean I have a tick? She's like, literally thought I might have a tick on myself. She goes, you blink a lot when you talk about your childhood. You may have some unprocessed childhood issues or trauma that are affecting your son. And I'm like, no way. I'm a single dad. I've been forever. I'm with him all the time. I take care of him. I don't hit him. I don't talk down. Like, I do everything. I love that kid. I was like, no way, but I'll try anything. So she's like, do you want to come work with myself and my husband? I said, sure. And in that weekend, Jet, my life forever changed. Actually, in a 3-hour session, laying in this bed in an Airbnb bedroom outside of Park City, Utah, my life forever changed. And I came back and I started looking around at my family members, my coworkers, like just my whole network. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many struggling people in this world. And they're struggling for the exact reason that I was struggling. And oh my Lord, I just solved it in 3 hours. So I was like, I just started telling people about my story because you were one of the few who knew old Brad, right? Old Brad is a lot different than new Brad. Old Brad was
Yeah.
drinking, he was smoking weed, he was losing lots of money, making lots of money, losing lots of money. And so I just started sharing my story with everyone, and people started opening up to me. I can't tell you how many people in the first 6 months of my transformation said, I've never told anyone that in my life, or you're the second person I've ever shared that with, because I created a safe place for them and they could relate to me. And they're like, wow, you're really good at this. So I just kept studying, and I studied under some of the best people. And then I started taking clients, and here we are 2 years later, and I've helped 100 clients, I think radically transform their lives.
Yeah, it's incredible to see that journey that you've been on. And I think it was like maybe 2 years ago. I remember the very first Saturday in San Diego, we walked outside in the cold and we went to, I think it was barbecue
Barbecue
space.
place.
Yeah. And then we were talking about that and you were kind of sharing the vision and the heart behind all of that. Like, and now, fast forward to today, like being part of the Collective Genius and the other groups, Family Mastermind, and I remember some people doing presentation and sharing how you've been an instrumental to their growth and to their happiness, which is fantastic. So it's great to kind of see that development and doing all of that. So um, another question for you. So what? You talk a lot about happiness and all of that. So what does happiness means to you?
Happiness. Wow. I think it's very simply, there's a couple of pieces that are involved in happiness. One, I think purpose is really, really big. Waking up every day with a sense of purpose. For 47 years, my sense of purpose was I got to make a lot of money. And I didn't know why until I did the work and figured out that the reason I wanted to make a lot of money was because I didn't feel enough and I needed to prove to the world that I was enough. But here's the tricky part: when you don't feel enough, nothing is ever enough. Look at Michael Jackson and Amy Winehouse and Pat Perry of Friends who just died. They had more than enough, but it wasn't enough. So I think purpose is really, really, really important. And I'm going to tell you in a second why a lot of people don't have purpose. The second component is self-love. And I know that sounds woo-woo. And 5 years ago, if I'd have heard that, I'd been like, that's so woo-woo. Like, I've got self-love. I thought I had self-love, but I didn't. So when you don't have self-love, it's usually because you have the opposite, which is self-contempt, which means you talk down to yourself a lot. You say negative things. How can you ever be happy if you're beating yourself up? You can't. So when you're beating yourself up, your brain doesn't know the difference between a complete stranger yelling insulting language at you or you saying it. Your brain still releases the cortisol, the chemical, the stress hormone, right? Which is an inflammatory. It's terrible for your body. So if you lack self-love or you talk down to yourself, if you talk down to yourself, you lack self-love, you are likely in a fight or flight state, which means you're always looking for the lion. Where's the lion going to jump out, right? Jet, how can you ever figure out your purpose in life if you're always running from the lion? And literally, most people in this world, I think, spend 75% of the time in a fight or flight. That means when they try to talk to their spouse, they shut down if they're in conflict. It means when they're on the road, they're always upset. They've got some depression. They've got some anxiety. So happiness is having a sense of purpose in waking up and doing what you love to do in a state which you actually like. You don't need, I used to need drugs and alcohol, drugs as in weed, to change my state because I didn't like my state. Now I love my state. So I'm happy 99.8% of the time.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Man, this is going to be a really great episode. I'm hoping that you get a lot of, takes right now. But so a lot of people are struggling, like entrepreneurs. Obviously, you are an entrepreneur. And I remember like one of the stories that you share was about like losing 10 million or so dollars. How would you say to somebody that is struggling, an entrepreneur that is struggling with finding purpose or direction in their lives? Like going back to what you were saying, like you're saying negative things about themselves. And I'll be vulnerable here. I do that a lot of time, like where I feel like, I'm not meeting, my clients' expectations, or like, I go really hard on myself, and my staff can even attest to that sometimes I just like feel like, so stressed or kind of, doing different things because I'm not doing that. So what would you say to some people that are, struggling, an entrepreneur that is struggling?
Yeah, there's so much here to unpack. Wow, that's a great question. First of all, let's start by making it clear that your negative self-talk, you think it's helping you. It's not helping you in any way. It's not helping your kids. Think about if you came in the house, and I'm not saying you do this, but think if you came in the house and was like, God, I'm such a freaking idiot. I just left the milk in the car. Now it's spoiled. God, I'm so dumb. What do you think your kids are going to take from that? They're going to be like, wait, this is my dad, my idol. He thinks he's dumb. So maybe I'm dumb. Like there's just nothing good that comes out of it. Stress hormones. So stop that, because there's nothing negative to talk about. You're an amazing human being. If you wouldn't say it to your best friend, don't say it to yourself. Seriously, like just please, for me, starting today, just stop the negative self-talk. When you catch yourself, just stop and say, no, I'm just a human being. I made a mistake. So entrepreneurs who are struggling, so many entrepreneurs like myself got into business because they thought, okay, I'm here. And if I can get to here, which means if I can put $5 or $10 million in the bank, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be worthy. That is a myth. I've just proved it. And Michael Jackson and Prince and Amy Winehouse, they're all dead. They've proved it. It's not about the money. So what I help people do is I help people get to the place mentally that they think $10 million is going to bring them today. And that's through self-love and self-compassion. And once you get there, Jet, the chances of you making the $5 or $10 million goes through the roof, because money never brings you happiness, but happiness actually brings you money. When you are doing something, when you wake up every day and you're fulfilled and you're purposeful and you want to do you're doing what you want to do, imagine how much time you're going to spend on something you like to do. If you hated chemistry or you hated algebra, would you like to go spend 5-6 hours doing it? No. I hate both of those subjects. But what I love is I love the brain. I love neuroscience. I love trauma. I love happiness. So I went to the beach 10 minutes south of here and spent 4 hours under an umbrella. Well, actually, I wasn't an umbrella. I got sunburned. I should have put up the umbrella earlier. And I read a book on how to overcome childhood programming. Dude, I could have sat there if the bugs hadn't started, but I could have sat there for the next 6 months and read and read and read. So entrepreneurs, you've got to figure out, why are you in business? And if you want to know if you're driven by sense of unworthiness, because I didn't know for 47 years, I didn't know that. I was just going about my business. Go to bradchandler.com/quiz. And in 3 minutes, you will know your level of self-love. If you lack self-love, you might be in business trying to make a bunch of money, just like I was. You can make a bunch of money. So let's say you don't do any work on yourself and you get to this place over here and you've got $10 million, but your relationship with your wife is broken. Your kids both have anxiety and they're acting out in school and your wife wants a divorce. Is that success?
Absolutely not.
Would anyone define that as a success?
No way.
I hope not. So don't be that person. Like it's not your fault. Everything that's going on in your life negative right now is not your fault. But once you have an awareness, like by taking the self-love quiz, then you do have a responsibility to change, especially if you have kids or a spouse, because you kind of owe it to yourself to get yourself together to help them.
Fantastic. So can you discuss some common obstacles or roadblocks that entrepreneurs/people typically face when they're trying to make a significant change in their life?
Yeah, another great question.
And then the follow-up question to that, how do they overcome that?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer those both together. This is gonna be a drop the mic moment, and if you're gonna listen to anything, listen to this. Every single thing you have negative in your life is not your fault. And when I say things you have negative in your life and they're not your fault, if you drink too much, if you're overweight and you've tried every diet, if you have depression, anxiety, OCD, you work too much, your relationships stink, your kids have behavioral problems, they have anxiety, it's not your fault. It is your brain's perceived solution to a problem that it thinks is actually worse than the negative repercussions from the negative behavior. You with me thus far? So if I got extremely nervous about coming on this podcast and I got anxiety, I wouldn't want the anxiety. Who would want the anxiety, right? This would be a fun situation to come to. But I might get terrible anxiety coming on this podcast. Why? Because my brain might say that if you mess up, someone might ridicule you like your dad did. And when your child and your dad ridicules you, you are afraid of losing attachment. And if you lose attachment, you can't survive as a child. So everything, whether it's drinking too much, eating too much, it is your mind perceiving that although it's negative, it's protecting you for something that's even worse. Here is the killer point. The thing that we're all running from that we think is worse, and the example I just gave you would be, if I mess up on this podcast, someone's going to publicly humiliate me or whatever, the word I used. It's untrue. It's something that was formed at 6, 7, 4 years old to protect me from a stressful situation. That is the reason that our prisons are full. It's the reason that the divorce rate is 50% on the first divorce rate, and on the third marriage, it's 72%. It's the reason why our hospitals are full. It's the reason why the wars are going on. It's because people are really hurt because they're running from something that they think is really bad. So how do you fix that? You've got to go back and figure out, when did you come up with this story and was it really true? And it's never true, because you cannot suffer if you live in the truth. And what is the truth? The truth is that you were not born with depression or addiction or alcoholism or working too much. Something happened in your childhood, likely in your childhood, not all the time, but likely, that got you to place a meaning around a series of events to protect yourself. And now we're sitting here as an adult and we're afraid to get on stage, or we're afraid to open up to our wife when she's like, why can't you just show me emotion? Because we're that little 6-year-old that's afraid of losing connection from our father and mother. And if we lose connection, we die. It is our survival brain doing exactly what it should be doing. So what do? We go back and we show the brain, wait, when did you mess up on stage or on a podcast and someone didn't humiliate you or chastise you? And I come up with a couple times that actually happened. Ding, ding, ding. The bells go off as a mismatch detector. And your brain's like, well, holy shit, I've been thinking this my whole life, but this isn't true. And as soon as your brain throws out, it actually creates a new neural pathway over top of the other one. Then the negative thing that you're trying to get rid of that you've never been able to, guess what? It goes away and it goes forever. Because now, once my brain says, you can walk on that stage and not worry about getting humiliated and losing connection and being unsafe, then I'll never get anxious again. I hope did that make sense what I just explained?
100%.
That's our problem across but the thing is, Jet, they only found out about this 20 years ago. It's new science. So there's probably less than 1% of therapists, psychologists, life coaches, psychiatrists that actually know and teach this. What most of them spend their time on, oh, you're anxious about getting up on stage? Let's teach you some breathing exercises. Do you think that ever really solves the problem? No. It just, maybe you can deal with it a little bit better, but this it's like ripping out the roots of a weed. You can pull the weed off, but if you don't get the roots, we go back to the roots and figure out where did it first happen so that we can reprogram the mind.
Fantastic. That is a game changing. And for anybody that is watching this, I hope that you're getting a lot of really great tips and tricks and learning from Brad over here. My next question for you is, in your experience, what would you say that mindset play in achieving personal transformation and happiness?
Yeah, so I'm not a big fan of the mindset word, and here's why, because all you ever hear is mindset, like Tony Robbins' mindset. I love Tony Robbins, but do you know how many tens of thousands of people have gone to a Tony Robbins conference, literally worked their ass off from 6 in the morning till like 9 at night, rah, 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 and then they came home and 2 days later, they look around, they're like, well, shit, I'm still drinking. I'm still yelling at my wife. I'm still kicking the dog. It's because they don't go deep. They don't go to the subconscious mind that drives 95% of your behavior. So mindset is just, I think it's an overused word. I like to say it's all about getting control of the subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind controls 95% of your behavior, but it's subconscious. So just like when you get in the shower, you don't think, I'm going to wash under my arm. You just do it. That programming is playing out when you walk on the stage or when you come home and drink the 3 glasses of wine, or you're driving to a job you don't like and you're yelling at people in the road and you're like, why am I like this? It's because of that subconscious programming. So more than mindset, you've got to get to, if you want to change something, you've got to have awareness for what is driving the behavior that you want to change. Well, how do you figure that out? You got to get to the subconscious mind. We use hypnosis. It's one of the best tools on the planet to do that. So self-love and awareness is way more, you can call it mindset. I just don't like it. So those two things are critical to personal success, because personal success to me is having the finances to do what you want, but loving what you want. And the biggest freedom in I think in anyone's world, which is true liberation, is the ability to be your authentic self without changing your behavior because you're worried about how other people will judge you. For 47 years, I told people, like, I don't give a shit what other people think. I love myself. I have high self-esteem. Dude, it was all a lie. I was hiding behind this mask of not feeling enough. When you get to that point and you can pull off that mask, that is when true freedom and happiness comes.
Awesome. You just shared something about, and I think a lot of people are like very hesitant about or like afraid about, you know where I'm headed with that,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
Hypnosis.
Hypnosis.
So can you talk a little bit about that and share, like, how you use that and what does that entail?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of speculation around that, right? Because people think about, a lot of them, whether they were in high school or college or they were at a comedy club and they see, people on stage and they're chasing around an animal or whatever. Obviously, it's not like that. We just get you in a deeply relaxed, like meditative state so that all of the noise all your conscious brain is kind of turned off, because your subconscious mind knows why you're drinking too much. It knows why you're eating too much. It knows why you're yelling at your wife. It knows why you have anxiety or depression. So once you're in a deeply relaxed state, we just simply ask you, Jet, take me to a time, a place, an event that has all to do with why you drink too much, smoke too much. And you're going to say, oh, when I was a child and my dad beat me, or my dad didn't show up to my soccer games, or my dad worked all the time, he was never there. I internalized that he wasn't here because he didn't love me because I wasn't good enough. So Then now we're getting to the source of the pain. What created this? And then I'm going to ask you, what did that mean about you? It meant I wasn't good enough. What did it mean about the world? It's a scary place. I got to fend on my own. What do you want it to mean about you? And you'd be like, well, now that I know, now that I'm adult, this had nothing to do with me. My dad was just working his ass off to provide for the family, but I internalized it as that something was wrong with me. It's that simple. That's how the change takes place. All awareness all change starts with awareness.
That's awesome. Um, yeah, this is really interesting. Like for me personally, like the way that you just described it, I did not in any shape or form would have thought that's kind of like, what you were gonna be doing. Like a lot of people, they would kind of like, do like, the repeat your name or follow my fingers. And that's exactly what I thought what hypnosis was. And like and somebody basically taking control of yourself or like make you do like crazy things because now they have control of yourself. That's kind of what that came through mind when you were describing hypnosis. So
Yeah, no,
thank you so much for sharing that.
sure. You have total control of your mind, and I do a couple deep breathing exercises. You look up, you breathe a couple times, and as you're looking up the final time, you close your eyes, and then I walk you down some steps, and then I basically say, your eyes are shut, you can't open them, and that kicks off hypnosis, and then you just sit there in a relaxed state, and I ask you some simple questions, and man, I mean, every single time, it's like, how do you feel at the end of this? And people are like, oh my God, I feel lighter, I feel free, I feel like this weight has been taken off my chest because we're walking around with this pain of that thing that we're running from. And how many times have you heard the word disorder? It drives me crazy when I hear people say, I've got this disorder. I've got attention deficit disorder. I've got hyperactivity disorder. I've got whatever. There's so many disorders. There's no disorder at all. Your brain is doing exactly what it should be doing because it's still a child in its childlike self is still thinking that this thing presents a clear and present danger. So it's acting in the way that it should. If I am going to go on stage and it's going to lead, it's not going to really lead, but in my head as a kid it is. If it's going to lead to me losing connection with my dad and dying, then my body should be saying there's danger, be careful. So when you get to the truth and you go deep through hypnosis and you unearth that, then again, it's gone away. And then that negative thing goes away. ADD, it's the same exact reason. You're gonna have a lot of doctors that tell you there's something wrong with your brain and let me give you drugs. Western medicine loves to diagnose, label, and give drugs because there's a lot of money in it. There's nothing wrong with a kid or an adult's brain who has ADD. Think about being in a really stressful situation as a kid over and over and over again. What are you going to do? You're going to disconnect. You're going to check out. Again, your brain is doing what it should be. But then if you never go back and solve that issue, you go from a 6-year-old to a 60-year-old and you still have that ADD because your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between yesterday and 40 years ago. Why? Because its only point is to keep you alive. So think if you're 10 years old and you go up to a bush and you shake it and a lion bites you. When you're 60, you don't want to forget about the bush with the lion in there. It's
Yeah.
a survival thing. It's evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the question that we were talking about earlier about entrepreneurs struggling and doing all of that. So what would you say to somebody that actually, went through some failures or some sort, and now, beating themselves to it or doing all of that. So what would you tell them on how to approach that and how to solve that? And so that way they don't go back into, talking bad about themselves and doing all of that.
Yeah, so you've got to figure out why did you make the mistakes? And it's very clear now as I look back on old Brad that those 5 business mistakes that cost me $9 million, every single one of them were silly things that I did I should take away the word silly. It was my brain trying to protect myself. But I did those interesting things is a better word. I did those things to try to protect myself. So you've got to figure out why did you do those? And if you go and take the self-love quiz and you have lack of self-love or mild self-love, I can't guarantee it's why you did those, but that may be a clue. Again, awareness. Why did you make those mistakes? Then the second thing is the mistake is over. Everything in life happens for you. So you've got to look at it that even those $9 million worth of mistakes I made, they all happened to me because if it didn't happen to me, how could I coach, my clients through there?
Yeah.
So I'm willing, it's okay now. Like I don't beat myself up about the $9 million. So you've got to get past it. And how do you get past it? You get past it by, again, going back to where did this all start and then changing that. When you change that, you're going to start to have self-love and self-compassion, which is going to allow you to not only beat up yourself, but become closer to your kids, to your business partners, to your spouse, like make you a better leader. It's not just one thing. It people will come to me with an issue, a racing mind, and then we'll be done. And they're like, Brad, my relationship with my wife is better. My kids are behaving better. I've lost 25 pounds and I'm making twice as much money as before. Because this one thing doesn't only control, me being afraid to be on stage, it controls a bunch of other things as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. While you were talking right here, there's something that keep coming to mind is when we had that conversation maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago in San Diego at when you says, Jet, my business is doing so much better now just because of all the stuff obviously that you've gone through and like the new focus and you know the more happy your Brad is going through. And you also told me that you're now like 1% in the business. You don't do like so much as you used to do in the business, and the business is doing much, much, much better now just because of the new transformational journey that you've went through, which is pretty fantastic.
100%. I spend 1 hour a week in that business. I created chaos on a constant basis because I remember earlier I said fight or flight. I was one of those people. So I was constantly trying to distract myself from a state that I didn't like. So I used business and new ideas and opening new markets. And it was utter chaos because I was constantly trying to hit the ball out of the park, because if I could do that, I could prove my worth. I never knew that no matter how many balls I hit out of the park, it didn't matter because I still wouldn't have felt enough. So what happened when I made that major transformative shift and I came back home, I started to look at life differently. I was like, now I don't need to make money to prove my worth. All I want to do is make an impact in the world. And so I started looking at my employees, my team members, the sellers, the clients. I was like, how can I make a bigger impact in their life? I didn't have to go chase new markets. I didn't have to chase shiny, objects, everyone that came. And because of that, the culture at my company changed. We hired different people. The chaos went away. Now we're on this like methodical like march, and my net worth in the last 3 years has exponentially grown over any other 3-year period ever in the last 20 something years I've been in business. And it would happen for you too. If you lack self-love and you're all over the place and you're struggling, someone said to me the other day, Brad, it's easy for you to talk about how money's not important, but what about the person who's struggling making their mortgage payment? And I go, the reason they might be struggling making their mortgage payment is exactly what we're talking about. Maybe it's that you were told you were no good and you're never going to amount, so you self-sabotage all the time. Maybe you haven't asked for a promotion at work because, you were told at home to not be seen or not be heard. So everything can relate back to this programming that we have buried in us.
Yeah. Well, talking about the chasing money, chasing the other stuff, what would you say to somebody that is strictly like an entrepreneur, strictly that's their goal, like, chasing money, chasing fame, all of that?
I would say that it's a real slippery slope. And just look at all the people who've gone behind you that chase money, and look at the people with cancer and suicide and obesity and everything. Like money, the fact is, you can agree with me or not agree with me, but money will never bring you happiness, ever. Once you get over $80,000 a year, they've done studies that shows that if whether you make 85 or 8.5 million, it doesn't affect your happiness. As long as you can pay your bills, your happiness is going to be from within.
I love it. I love it. So, my next question: how do you encourage individuals to embrace vulnerability and learn from their experiences? Obviously, you shared a little bit about all the big 5 mistakes that you've made. So, yeah,
Yeah, so we like to say that vulnerability is a superpower. Um, I can tell you, because I was someone who couldn't be vulnerable. It's really, really freaking hard when you've got these programming issues in your head. When
yeah,
you've got this thing that you're running from, it's really hard to be vulnerable. When you don't feel enough, it's really hard to be vulnerable. So by doing the work and creating those, turning around those untruths, you now become free because you can be your authentic self. When you can become vulnerable is when connections happen, when deep connections happen with your spouse, with your children, with your employees, even with your customers. how do you get to be vulnerable and why do you want to become vulnerable? Because vulnerability is a superpower that's going to do nothing but help you. And the only reason you're not vulnerable is, guess what? It's not your fault. You're protecting yourself because there might have been a time where you opened up. Your mom didn't give you a cookie when you're 5 years old. So you told her you hated her. She cried for 2 hours and then dad came home and hit you. So now you've been taught, hey, I cannot speak up. So you're scared to be yourself, not your fault. But now, after this podcast, you have the awareness that you can take this first step. Someone is going to listen to this podcast and their lives and relationships and finances will be changed forever. Will it be you?
I love it. So with the increasing prevalence of stress and anxiety in today's world, what strategies would you recommend that for somebody that is trying to manage those challenges?
Yeah. Go back and listen to the first 20 minutes of this podcast because depression and anxiety, it's a sad fact that 33% of Americans, that's 100 million Americans, are on an antidepressant or anti-anxiety drug. But yet, when you look at hospitalizations for anxiety and depression, what direction do you think they're going? They're going up. So, do the drugs work? No, the drugs don't work. The drugs are the band aid, right? How do you stop depression and anxiety? Why do you have depression and anxiety? Because your brain is giving you depression and anxiety because it feels like it's protecting you from something that's even worse. But that thing that you think is even worse is nothing more than an untruth that was formed to get you through childhood stress and trauma. That's it. Once you fix that, poof, your anxiety. This mastermind that we're at right now, I've helped several people that had anxiety, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's been weeks. Now it's been months." I was like, "When's the last time I haven't felt anxiety? When's the last time that happened? I can't ever remember a time in my life that didn't happen. Did I give them any drugs? Did I take 10 years? No, we just did the same exact things that I'm talking about."
Yeah,
It's crazy if you can see my passion because there's so many people suffering, and you might be one of them that's suffering with debilitating depression or anxiety. And it doesn't have to be that way. Literally, like in a matter of hours, if you're ready for change, your whole world can change. And that anxiety and depression can poof, be gone, literally in a matter of hours.
I love it. So for a lot of people that are, have big goals and big things that they want to accomplish, how do you balance between setting those ambitious goal and practicing self-compassion and acceptance along the way?
I think it all comes back to, so once you find self-love, then you don't have to make money for the sake of making money. You can take my strategy where you look at how can I make an impact. You can have audacious goals. I have a goal. I turned 50 last year. I'm manifesting that I'm going to live to be 110. And I want to help 1 million people transform their life to get out of this struggle and suffering that they're in. And I want them to help them get to a state of freedom and happiness. So there's no balance. It's really not a balance because you do the work and then you spend an hour a week or something continuing to do the work, meditating, uh, staying in a community like ours, and then everything else falls in place. Like you don't have to. When the struggle is gone, you can have ambitious goals. But when you have the ambitious goals for the powerful reasons of making an impact or changing people's lives, rather than for the sake of lining your bank account to feel better, you're going to make more money than you ever thought possible.
That is a Mac drop moment right here. As I like to say, that's so fire. There you go. I have a couple more questions, and this talk was like very fantastic. Maybe we'll make it three. Um, the first one is, what are some practical daily habits and rituals that you can do? And then the following one is is success stories that you've had. But let's start with the first one. So, what are some practical habits or rituals that you believe that can contribute to the long term happiness and fulfillment?
Yeah. So sleep is just absolutely critical. And if you're having trouble sleeping, sleep is nothing more than an issue of the mind. You don't need drugs. It's probably because your mind is racing, and it's probably racing because of all the things we've just spent hours on. Sleep, exercise, super important. Diet, super important. If I came and worked with you, if you had depression or anxiety, and I, in 3 hours, which I've often done to 3 to 5 hours, completely changed you, right? Now your anxiety and depression are gone or severely reduced. And you start sleeping 4 hours a night and drinking a 12 pack a night and no exercise and eating 12 donuts, your depression might come back. You're like all of those things are so important to your mental health. So you've got to do those things. Meditation is absolutely phenomenal. I usually don't get out of bed at night or go to sleep I don't get out of bed in the morning or go to sleep at night without at least doing a 10 to 15-minute meditation. We have a tool that your listeners can get for free at bradchandler.com/joy. It's called the Joy Regenerator. It literally teaches you if you're in a negative state, you're sad, you have a negative emotion, how in a series of steps to get out of that and get back to joy. I've done it so many times now that I literally in nanoseconds can run through that in my brain and be like, why am I feeling this way? Oh my God, I'm feeling this way because it's my 6-year-old self. I'm feeling sad because I'm not enough. I know I'm enough. So am I going to, because here's how kind of your brain works. You have a thought that creates an emotion, that creates an action, and that action often reinforces the thought. So I'm going to make up a silly example. I'm fat and disgusting. That's my thought. So I feel sad and disgusted. So I go eat 2 or 3 pint Ben& Jerry's to feel better. And then I'm like, see, I'm fat and disgusting. Some people stay in this thought loop forever. So we teach you using the Joy Regenerator how to get out of that, because any negative emotion that I now feel in my life, Jet, it's from my thought of I'm not enough. So I'm like, but I know I'm enough. So why am I feeling sad? There's no reason for feeling sad. And I'm not perfect, but 9 times out of 10, within seconds or minutes, I can click out of it and go back to my joy.
Fantastic. Awesome. So I know you alluded to that a little bit earlier too, that you've helped so many different people. And I know some of the people that you've helped. Can you share some success story? You don't need to, mention names or anything like that. Unless if they give you the, opportunity to say that. But can you share some success stories or memorable moments from your work with clients, and share a little bit about the transformative
Yeah.
power of personal development?
So I'm going to share one that and the reason I'm going to share his name, everything is 100% confidential, but this person's given me permission. He was actually on my podcast. So Brent Bowers, who's a member of Family Mastermind, he came to me with racing mind and kind of overwhelm. And he was like, Brad, I'm a business guy. There's an investment here. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to make this back. So 6 months after he started the program, I had him on the podcast. And I have an amazing podcast called How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. You could go listen to his episode, Brent Bowers. And at the end of the podcast, he's like, my relationship with my wife has gotten better. My son, who had behavioral problems, is doing a lot better. I'm working less. I'm less stressed. And my income has gone up double since working with you. So he's like, I didn't come to make more money, but I now am making more money. Why? Because he was in fight or flight. He was running from the proverbial lion. He killed the lion. So how can you critically look at your business and creatively think about what are the next steps when you're running from the lion? When you kill the lion, then you can sit back and be like, take a deep breath and be like, this is what I should do next. So he's one of just countless success stories.
Yeah, I just love hearing all of that and all the great success that you've had with that. But I gotta ask you though, this t-shirt, no one can love you, your life. I mean, you can. Talk about that t-shirt a little bit.
No one can love you like you can. So the example of the kid yelling at his mom or saying, I hate you, and then the mom yelling for 2 hours, he didn't get what he needed. And everything in your life that's negative comes back to your childhood needs not being met. And very, very few of us, literally on the planet, got all of our childhood needs met. So as an adult, you get to be the parent, the loving parent that you may not have had. So no one can love you like you can. You need to give yourself the love, because anytime you feel that anxiety, that stress, that sadness, that whatever you're feeling, it's not the 47-year-old, it's the 7-year-old inside you. So imagine that little 7-year-old came up and tapped on your leg and said, I'm feeling really sad. How would you handle that? Most people would pick that little girl up or that little boy and say, you're wonderful. I love you. I've got you. We're going to sit here with this. We're not going to go grab a joint. We're not going to go drink a 12-pack. We're not going to go work. We're not going to go gamble, right? We're going to sit here and process the emotions, because so many of us feel these emotions and we just run for something to try to quell these emotions.
Yeah. You just started talking about kids, and then you said, I don't want to go smoke a joint. Like, it's just like, are you going to be smoking a joint with the kid? That was fantastic. So if you had to share one big tip or trick to listeners over here, what would you tell them? I,
I think any journey begins with a step. And I didn't know if it wasn't the happenstance of me trying to get my son help for his anxiety, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. Frankly, I'd be at the hotel probably hitting on a weed pen. Really, because I would start hitting the weed pen at like 4 or 5 at these events and then have, some bourbons, right? I wouldn't be sitting here. So take the first step by taking the self-love quiz at bradchandler.com/quiz. Do yourself a favor because without awareness, you can't change anything. So take that simple like 3 minutes out of your life and take that quiz. That would be my best advice.
awesome. So obviously, I think you've already mentioned to people how they can get a hold of you, but I would like you to reiterate that again. Um, if somebody is interested about learning more about you, or even like starting to work with you, how can they get a hold of you? What is the easiest way for them to do so?
bradchandler.com/contact has everything. It has the self-love quiz. It has the podcast. It has actually my contact information with my cell phone. If you're struggling, if you know someone who's struggling, if you just want to talk, reach out to me. I'm here to help you.
Fantastic. Well, Brad, it was a fantastic time with you, and I am very elated that you were able to come here, record the podcast with me here, and also, glad to see like the progress and the change and the transformational journey that you've gone through. And I'm extremely happy to call you a friend, and also for the opportunity that gotten to work together as well.
Yeah, friend and a client. You do amazing work. The studio is absolutely amazing. I was making some silly videos in your make believe aquarium back there. You're the stuff that you've done over the years. I've seen it. I've seen other people's stuff. I've heard reviews, from other people, and it's just awesome. So if you're looking for video services, editing services, you're just exceptional. So good work.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Brad. Means a lot. Well, again, thank you for tuning in for this episode with Brad Chandler. I hope that as a result of this podcast, that you are going to take the first step in making a change in your personal development. I know that I personally learned a lot from you today, Brad. So thank you for sharing all of those great nuggets. So yeah, again, thank you for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it. I would immensely appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button for more amazing content coming up. So you know what it is. It's your boy, Storyteller Jet. Let's go, baby. It's fire.